Nearly 20 years ago, Katrin Klingenberg built the first so-called passive house in the U.S. She did it in Illinois, where she lives today, sparking considerable interest, and she went on to found the nonprofit organization Passive House Institute U.S, or PHIUS. It's an organization that was ahead of its time, focusing on energy-efficient development, but now is broadening its scope to help take sustainable building mainstream. This includes providing training on how to design and build carbon-neutral structures, and creating a rating system aimed at accelerating the shift to net zero. It's resulted in everything from single-family homes to high-rise towers. Now, as other industries like transportation are moving towards a carbon-neutral future, has the moment finally come for the real estate industry to begin to change too? Katrin joined us to discuss. Katrin Klingenberg, welcome.
Hello.
So let's start with this term PHIUS and passive building. Here in South Florida, these are both terms that I think most people are not aware of. Tell us what they are.
Yeah, so passive building refers originally to measures that focus on conservation, energy efficiency in a building, which directly translates into essentially measures that make your building perform better for heating and cooling. So in cold climates, that is easily done with insulation. In warmer climates, such as yours, it is a little bit, I wouldn't say more difficult, it's actually easier, but you would use other measures than just simply insulation or like triple pane glazing. Obviously, you don't need that. So to make your building envelope perform better, you would choose different strategies in a hot climate like yours.
And so there was passive building. This is something that goes back to like the 70s and the 80s. And you, about 20 years ago, you're from Germany originally. In fact, you're coming to us from Hanover right now, but you live in Chicago. And about 20 years ago, it was, I think, in Champaign-Urbana that you actually built a passive built home. And that stirred lots of attention. And that then prompted you to start PHIUS, which is an organization that you're an executive director of. What is PHIUS?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. I started by building my own home using these strategies. Urbana is actually a really great place in Illinois because it has hot, cold, and humid climates. So my building had to use all different strategies that are available to someone to create a passive building. And as soon as the building was done, I was able to invite folks into the home, like in that particular case, the City Council of Urbana. And once you have a home that is so well built and so efficient and so quiet and so like the indoor air quality is exceptional, people feel that immediately. And folks said like, wow, this is a really, really great way to build buildings. We love the durability. We love the quality. So we're going to actually give you a grant to build more of these homes. And one home turned into 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. The Department of Energy took notice of what we were doing at the time. And soon enough, we developed training curricula to teach other folks what we had learned throughout the construction of these first homes. And out of that grew the nonprofit Passive House Institute U.S, now PHIUS. We're trying to get away from the house because we also learned along the way that the principles apply to really all building typologies, not just houses, but offices, schools, high rises, you name it. So because there was so much interest, we eventually grew into an organization that set standards, that kind of formulated these techniques so that pretty much everybody could achieve this level of efficiency with a building. And that's what we do now. We basically create and set standards as a nonprofit, and our standards have been accepted throughout the nation into various policies by now. So we're seeing some really significant uptake for our building certification.
Yeah, now, I mean, it's beginning to cut into the mainstream. although just beginning. It feels like, other industries such as the auto industry is making the move into sustainability and sort of into that carbon neutral future. Still feels a lot earlier in real estate development, but it's beginning to happen. And give us some examples of the sorts of buildings that have gone up that are sustainable buildings under the PHIUS benchmark.
Yeah, so and maybe a little bit more before we go there on the PHIUS benchmark. So our standards are quite unique in the world. They are configured for different climates. Specifically for each climate, we have different strategies and different benchmarks. And the benchmarks were developed with cost and climate in mind. So basically, we are giving people design guidance for like essentially the kind of like the equivalent for buildings, like a miles per gallon measurement, right? Like energy per square foot consumed in a building. And that level of energy consumption is set based on the sweet spot between conservation and generation. So at some point, your envelope upgrades cost you a lot more than jumping off to renewable energy. So our overall goal, obviously, is creating a carbon neutral future or decarbonizing the building operation. On our pathway to zero, many cities like your own have climate action plans. So what PHIUS does, it paves the way to achieving zero energy buildings. And these zero energy buildings now have been built all over the country. We have a couple of really high profile examples that we have certified. One of them is the Innovation Center, the new headquarters of the Rocky Mountain Institute in Colorado. That's a very cold climate. We have quite a few schools and community centers and recreation centers here in Illinois that are built to our PHIUS standard and that are also zero energy. So they go all the way. They created a very energy efficient envelope based on our targets and then added renewable energy to zero out the remaining operational carbon.
So it sounds like there's sort of two levels here. There's that, so under the standard you've created, there's one that gets you really close, and then you can sort of go all the way to a building that's net zero. Now, in terms of types, this ranges from, you said they're high rises, office buildings as well across the country. I guess the institute you mentioned in Colorado, which I guess is in sure. Denver, so it's really across use types, homes, offices, stores. I imagine have we seen any hotels yet?
We have seen hotels yet, yes. We wow. have. Hotels are very close to our bread and butter residential, right? Like this is where we started. And then we kind of like branched out into the commercial realm. Hotels are very, very similar to residential, essentially.
So let's talk about the trends that we're seeing. So this was,
yes.
20 years ago, this was a single house that you were doing.
Yes.
Now, how many have we seen built to date, and then what's in the pipeline? Give us a sense of sort of the trajectory of this building.
Yeah, so fully certified projects were right around like 600 projects. A lot of them are really, really big. So at the end of 2021, we've had a total of, I believe, 7.4 million square feet fully certified. So that's no longer a niche. So you mentioned this earlier, it's becoming more and more mainstream and more popular because of incentives that have been created throughout various states. And that is absolutely true. So if you look at our project certification curve, there's a very, very clear exponential growth trend now that we can observe. And by the end of this year, we're actually looking at total of, and this is also, so we have various tiers of certification. What I just said is only fully certified. If you add in what has been submitted over the last couple of years, we'll be at about like 30 million square feet by the end of the year.
So as you talk about specific places where this is happening right now, and of course, the name of your nonprofit PHIUS is in part inspired by the Prius, that was such a pioneer of the electric car. But then for it to really go mainstream, I think one could argue it required something like Tesla to come along and really begin to change the industry. And now, of course, we see the entire auto industry making this huge switch right now to electric. As it relates to real estate development, what do you think it will take to go from right now, where we certainly see these really positive trend lines in certain parts of the country, but to go from certain parts of the country to something that's being felt across the country?
Well, my hope is that we're going to be successful making the case to developers that, as I said before, this is like something you cannot afford not to do because it is that good, even without incentives. Very small upfront premium, high quality building, indoor air quality, comfort, acoustics. It's an incredibly luxurious building. The benefits are just by far outweighing these small additional upfront costs. And the energy savings are right around like 40-50% for larger buildings, and that's very significant.
Oh, once you get going, the operating costs are dramatically
less. Yes.
So let's close with this. 3 sort of quick rapid fire questions. Start with, for the real estate developer that is interested in this here in South Florida, what would you say to them?
Down by you, it's super easy. So I didn't come fully unprepared. We ran like a mid-sized multifamily building in your climate. And essentially, you developer, please imagine you're building to the Energy Code 2018 IECC. You don't have to add any additional insulation. You don't have to buy any fancy windows. In your climate, basically, it all comes down to increasing the airtightness of your envelope and choosing more energy efficient systems, basically heat pump based systems, including, ideally, you would want to build your building all electric. So that means also hot water would have to be electric. And at that point, you can, those are easy changes to make. You don't have, my guess is that you probably have less additional upfront cost in your climate.
And what would you say to the resident, the concerned citizen who wants to see Miami become a place where there's a lot more sustainable real estate development?
You should ask for this. You should ask Miami to make PHIUS type efficiency standards code in your community. Because if and when you do that, it actually becomes fairly easy to take it all the way to zero energy through additional community solar, wind generation. As soon your building stock is super energy efficient and you reduce the peaks, the energy transition to a renewable grid is really made easy. And the grid gets hardened through it. The building becomes more resilient. You're safer. You live in better quality buildings. I mean, there's a win-win-win-win at every corner for everybody.
And lastly, what do you say to the elected who wants to speed up South Florida and Miami's transition to that net zero future?
Do it. All you need is political will. We're here. We have no technological barrier. We know how to do it. You're ready to go. You have all the tools at your fingertips. Look at Massachusetts and follow their lead.
And it seems like there are a couple ways you could do it. One is, of course, for governments themselves and build their own buildings that they're funding to follow along sustainable building practices. But then, as you point out, with places like Massachusetts or New York, actually set up policies and standards that required across the private sector.
Yeah, and it is an economic development opportunity. And that's really why New York State started on it. They wanted to become a leader in like highly energy efficient building technologies, components, materials, and buildings. So that's the future.
Well, Katrin Klingenberg, thank you very much. And so appreciate you joining us staying up late and joining us from Germany. Look
Yes.
forward to seeing you when you're back stateside, and hope you'll come down to Miami.
I'll be back soon. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you'll engage with us online and on social channels, and hope to see you next time on Opportunity Miami.